to power your home. In fact, the average electricity bill in Australia has more than doubled in the last 15 years, but not for the ones who went solar. Unlike your electricity bill, the price of solar has actually come down, and there's also government rebates available. So what are you waiting for? Join the 2 million households already saving hundreds of dollars every year. See how much your roof could be making you at solarpowerco.com.au. Go solar and get $500 cash back with the Solar Power Co, Australia's most trusted solar brand. solarpowerco.com.au.
Since 1998, Lanco Group has been providing superior civil engineering solutions and advice to developers, local government and service authorities across Australia. Lanco Group is known for delivering sustainable, efficient solutions. By working closely with clients, Lanco Group is able to meet the complex infrastructure requirements for residential, commercial and industrial developments on time, on budget. Find out more at lancogroup.com.au. Lanco Group, your business partner for engineering solutions.
Are you looking to change your destiny in life? Be your own boss? Start your own business? If you are, you need people who understand your needs and are committed to helping you make it happen. At DKP & Co Chartered Accountants, we are more than just accountants. We are business advisors, taxation consultants, and strategists that specialise in setting up businesses. We understand the client and give them the very best customised advice and strategies to achieve their goals. Visit our website dkpco.com.au or give us a call today on 03 9023 9370. Fast, proactive, personal. That's DKP & Co Chartered Accountants.
In the embers of an unforgettable Italian summer, a new season full of hope, promise and excitement from the Bel Paese awaits us on the horizon. The drama, ecstasy and more importantly, the heartbeat of football, the fans who fill the terrace for the first time in 17 months return as the Serie A enters its 124th season. Who will dethrone Inter? Does the special one have a remontada in the making? Is Sarri ball back? But this time in the capital, and how many more deals has Paolo Maldini conjured on his voyages to Ibiza? We shall see. Welcome to FNR's special Serie A preview podcast. My name is Nick D'Urbano, and we are brought to you today by our special partners, Lanco Group, your business partner for engineering solutions. We've shone the bucket hat signal, and the call has been answered. Joining me today is the man himself, Ante Jukic. Ante, welcome.
Merry Christmas, everyone. Football and drama, more importantly, is back. Cannot wait for Serie A this season. Personally, I feel if not the best league in the world, it's the most competitive and most varied league in the world in terms of interpretation and implementation from a coaching standpoint. It's got styles, drama, controversy, everything you want. Serie A is the best, and I am very excited.
You know what, as we said, Ante, the best way to describe last weekend for those that probably watched, the majority of the football diaspora who watched the Manchester United Leeds game, it was, as Josh Parrish, who will be joining us a bit later, described it, it was like eating a bucket full of cinema popcorn. The way I described it was like eating a HSP. It's great in theory, you love it, you're excited for it, but afterwards you just feel like absolute crap.
No regret with Serie A, man. No regret with Serie A.
Serie A is like a beautiful wood-fired pizza washed down with a beautiful glass of Vino Rosso. And it's going to be a great season, Ante. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through every team. We'll go alphabetical. Cool. We'll bring our predictions at the end. And it's really, we're saying it's so hard to make predictions in this season because there are so many teams that can make top four, Europa League, win the league, relegated. It's going to be a crazy, crazy season. So let's start off with Atalanta. I mean, for the past few seasons, they have captivated us all with, their amazing football and their rise up the table. Does the magic eventually run out, Ante? Are you excited? Are you buoyed for them again this season? Because, they've lost a few, but they've brought in Mehdi Demiral, which is quite an exciting signing, along with Juan Musso as well.
And that was, look, I'm neither big or or small on Atalanta. I'm kind of in between on them. Atalanta in the transfer market are, kind of like, let's say, if you could compare them to anyone in the transfer market, they're like Phil Hellmuth at the poker table. Like if they like, they openly want you to know that you are a fish and they are going to eat you up. And if they got Tammy Abraham, like there was that first domino of Zapata going to Inter, and that changed. Abraham didn't go to Atalanta, so they're really likely going to keep Zapata, even though Zapata wants out. I do like the fact that they did bring in Demiral, probably one of the best young centre backs in the league. Probably should have got more time at Juventus, and especially with Romero going to Tottenham, it was a necessary fill for positional need, and one and that was the kind of thing with Atalanta. Like the moves that they had to make, they got them done quickly in the window. And if they needed to make, certain maneuvers later in the transfer window, they could do it. But generally got continuity. The big one for me is given the fact that they haven't got Pobega yet from Milan, and does that at least does that infer that Gasperini is going to go with Darun and Freuler as a consistent pairing in midfield? And that's probably been the one kind of, if you could say a chink in Atalanta, it was probably the rigidity of their midfield, irrespective of how they use the midfield from a means of positional rotation. Does Malinowski go deeper to allow for the likes of, or even Pessina to go deeper for to allow for the likes of Pasalic or Malinowski, or even players like Lammers? They're really interesting. I still think they're going to be very good. I still think they're a top 4 team, but their ceiling is something I'm uncertain of. I'll say that.
Yeah, I think that's similar sentiment in regards to their ceiling. I mean, every year, we think, can they actually go that step further, potentially win the Scudetto? And every time they've teased, it seems like something goes astray. I mean, when you play such a progressive style, you're bound to lead yourself a little bit down to the back, which has happened. I mean, there's so much, all systems go, get players forward, play that progressive, exciting brand that sometimes very good teams, and we've seen it. I remember probably their most recent game was that game against Milan in the final game of the season, completely destroyed defensively. I think that they've kept Josip Ilicic, which I think is really interesting considering he has been asking to leave for quite some time. Yeah, and there's been a big U-turn there. I'm excited about, bringing in, I think Musso is a great signing. I think, Udinese, losing him, he was such a key part for them in terms of being able to just keep those clean sheets. And they lost Golini. It's a great replacement. The squad
got it done early in the window. Got it done early in the window and got it for cheap as well. And then another thing, they were able to sell Musa Barrow for good money as well. They have been it's not a surprise, and it's more a continuation of how they've operated. But they've done, in terms of maximizing value in the transfer market, they've done exceptionally well. And it's now just a means of getting the most out of that squad. Do they have, don't get me wrong, Papu Gomez is an absolutely massive out, and he was so transformative for them in terms of how they could use him as a reference point for all that positional rotation. He was very much important for that. And they kind of suffered in his absence, even though, Pessina gave him a lot of pressing and they did alter how they played. But now, over the course of a season, it's going to be a really interesting one to see how it goes. That's going to
Without spending too much time on him, I mean, Pessina's an interesting case study because we saw him in Italy's team in the Euros of how he was used. It was very different to how he's going to be used in the Atalanta team. Two very, very, very different systems. The one thing I think we can both agree is we want to probably see Mario Pasalic play even closer to goal.
He even plays a striker sometimes under Gasperini.
Absolutely. They've got so many weapons up top. I can't see them finishing anywhere lower than the top 6. I think the 2 is so open that really it could be a matter of those nitty-gritty games where you just need to get those points and other teams usually drop. Those Udinese, those Cagliari games, which are so important. So if I'm to go on a limb, though, I'm going to say that they finish 4th this season, Ante. I think that they just scrape in. I think they do just enough to get into the top 4. But we'll move on from Atalanta and we'll talk about Bologna. I mean, Bologna, they're just there. I mean, they always have been for quite some time. Sinisa Mihajlovic is the manager of them. They have some exciting players. I think some players that I always enjoy. I mean, Tomiyasu is the one that stands out. I think that it'd be interesting to see if he sticks around for the next couple of weeks. They've brought in Marco Arnautovic and Kevin Bonifazi, but Arnautovic is a very Bologna signing. I mean, you know, we've seen in the last couple of seasons, Cagliari and Bologna and some of these mid-table teams come in with these random signings. Arnautovic sort of, you know, epitomises that. But their pre-season form hasn't been good, Ante. They lost in the Cup 5-4 at Nana, so they have issues defensively.
Speaking of Musa Barrow, you know, like there's going to be a predominant reliance on him, I'd imagine, if he stays fit. And the interesting dynamic for Bologna is, like, you know, as you mentioned, Arnautovic, and working with a Balkan coach. And like there's going to be, it's actually just a really interesting dynamic for me. Like he's never really had that over the course of his career. And if there's anyone who was as volatile as Arnautovic was as a player, it was Sinisa Mihajlovic. And the thing about Mihajlovic as a coach, he's a player's coach. Like, irrespective of implementation, like his players absolutely play for him, irrespective of, you know, all his health concerns and the manner in which he fought through that, like more than admirably. His players play for him, and you, like, irrespective of their nondescript nature as a team tactically, they're never a necessarily easy proposition for any team in the competition. They are tough. They absolutely play for each other. And it's going to be interesting. Like, it's not like they're going to go down or anything, but like they'll be there or thereabouts, like for that last European place. But, you know, they're a potential banana skin for the tougher teams. You know what I mean? Yeah.
I mean, they'll always be that team that, you know, you go away to Bologna and you might find yourself, you know, on the end of a 0-0 draw per se. But I think, as we did say, defensively, there are issues. If they lose Tomiyasu, that as well exacerbates that. I don't know if they're going to have enough time or enough, you know, sort of pulling power to bring in enough guys with that money, because they'll get a decent sum. You'd think that somewhere in the 20 million for him. But if they can keep him, it certainly helps. But in around that, you know, they've got Riccardo Orsolini up top, who, you know, has shown glimpses he can be a damaging player. Roberto Soriano's not getting any younger, which is also a bit of a concern. You mentioned Musa Barrow. They've still got Gary Medel on their books as well, still kicking around.
Yeah.
So they've got some sort of, you know, they've got names almost. You know, some names we've seen come and go throughout.
Name signings. They're operating like a Turkish super club. But
literally, they're the closest thing probably to it in terms of how they do their business in Serie A. But, you know, they'll probably find a way to stay up this year. I have them, you know, sort of, you know, lower to mid-table, battling relegation.
Yeah. Like,
nothing.
Because the lower to mid-table in Serie A tends to, like, take points off each other, and there really isn't a lot of breathing room between, like, that last, generally in Serie A, like that last relegation spot up all the way up to about 13th, 12th. You know, there isn't really a lot of room, a lot of teams taking points off each other. Bologna will probably be in the upper ranges of that kind of tier. They'll be safe.
Yeah.
They won't really push the needle or push the envelope, so to speak, but they'll do well enough to, you know, stay competitive, stay in the league. And, you know, if they sell a few players here and there, then go for it. But it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see how they go under Mihajlovic.
Yeah, absolutely. So moving on from one nondescript team to another, Cagliari, the boys from Sardinia, under Don Semplici at the helm.
Speaking of banana peels.
I think the majority of Milan Twitter and Rossoneri fans out there will never forget that second last game of the year last year when they came to the San Siro and put 11 players behind the ball and robbed them of a chance to lock in the top four a week earlier. This team, they're completely nondescript. Like that, they are probably the epitome of it.
But you know what? They are compatible for Semplici. Semplici, even when he was at Spal, like, they were very defensively resolute under him. Yeah. And at Cagliari, like, you do have a lot of running players in midfield. Like your Nate Hernandez, Marco Rog, Kevin Strootman as well. There's going to be a reliance, let's say, on João Pedro, I'd imagine, in terms of
absolutely
like a creative outlet. But you know what you're going to get from Cagliari. They'll probably stay up. But you're not necessarily certain. Cagliari have been a bit shaky, but I think under Semplici they'll just do enough to stay up.
Yeah, and I mean, the issue is probably going forward for them. They've still got Leonardo Pavoletti leading the line. Which, he's 3 or 4 years past the prime when he start hitting his prime at 32 or whatever, how old he is.
But it's not a Chicho Caputo, man. Like this is a different kind of late bloomer.
Yeah, well, Pavoletti is your typical sort of late bloomer in Italian football in terms of a striker, just hits form. He's a big boy as well. Giovanni Simeone as well, the son of Cholo. They've got, you did say they're a hardworking, well organised team, and they've got Diego Godin at centre back, who's we know how accomplished he is throughout his career to organise that. Alessio Cragno between the sticks as well. A very good goalkeeper, the number 4 for Italy right now as well, and he's someone who probably will push in once Sirigu retires. Again, a team that will probably just stay up by getting a lot of 0-0s. I think that probably sums it up. If you, for those listening, if you just want to look at their last few results of last season, there's a 1-1 against Cagliari, a 0-0 against Fiorentina, a 0-0 against Milan. They did get a win against Pisa in the cup the other day, but when you're playing these Serie B teams, it's hard to really get a bit of a gauge unless you lose, and like Bologna did, and that's a little bit worrying. But Cagliari, we'll probably say they stay up this season. Moving on, the Serie B champions, Empoli. I remember 2 or 3 seasons ago now, Ante, they were very exciting with Ismail Benacer, Chicho Caputo, Rade Krunic, especially Ismail Benacer, and they just got relegated, probably undeserved, and they're back, and their coach is Aurelio Andreazzoli, so we are not expecting the same.
It's like Andreazzoli has been at least categorized as one of those specialists, let's say, to try and keep a team up or try and get a team promoted. And that's kind of been exemplified by him getting a 1-year deal this year at Empoli. He's basically been given the task of keeping Empoli up. They in Serie B, like they're this Empoli are weird in the sense that they're too good for Serie B, but like they haven't really bridged that gap to Serie A, and so they do have good individual players. Yeah, and so like it's going to be interesting, and as always, when you do have these kinds of seasons, when the primary and sole objective is to stay up, like the first couple of months are pretty crucial, and so it can either quickly go pear-shaped for Andreazzoli, or he'll have enough just to keep his head above water, and then that obviously extends to the squad. We'll see what happens, but I don't see them being any higher than, let's say, that 18th, 17th, 16th, area if they do stay up, because it's going to be an interesting season for them.
I think it's disappointing that Dionisi is not the coach for them this season. I think because he's the heir apparent to De Zerbi literally taken over from Sassuolo, because he literally plays the same philosophy. So he would have probably seen them, if he was the coach, play them a really exciting brand. Leonardo Mancuso was their top goal scorer last year, scored 20 goals, little known sort of Serie B striker. They brought in Patrick Cutrone on loan from Wolves. It's a real fall from grace from can't get the word out, Cutrone, since, leaving Milan a couple of years ago, going to Wolves, not really hitting his strides in the Premier League. Fiorentina and Valencia loan deals didn't really work out. So hopefully he can find his feet here. I mean, he's not the sort of striker that's going to be able to keep him up. That's the thing, because he relies heavily on chaos.
He's not. He's not necessarily creative or an incorporative kind of striker for them. And so the most of the chances that he'll be able to generate for Empoli, like you said, will be generated from chaos ball. It's a long way from when Sarri took them over, and they really created a pretty big impact under Sarri, but it'll be a pretty big departure from that, I reckon, this season.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me as well, they probably just go down. I think just about think that they're probably going to be in the bottom three this year. Moving on to Fiorentina, they disappoint me every year, Ante. I just don't know what to expect from them. Every year, they sign 4 or 5 players, and you think, okay, this is it, and then they disappoint. They've gone through, I think, 6 or 7 managers since Montella sort of had them in that European positions back around 2015. They're set to lose Dusan Vlahovic and Christian Kwame in a double swoop, really, in the coming days. And losing Vlahovic, we're not going to talk about where he's going and the match and the compatibility of him potentially going where he's going, but it's a massive loss for Fiorentina.
Yeah, I think another variable you have to take into account with Fiorentina is the ownership. Taking into account all those managerial changes, it was done amidst a lot of chaos. And even now, with respect to their disappointment, Commisso is very ambitious, and you've kind of seen a disparity between expectation and reality, which is still kind of confusing, because they have decent individuals, but they've never really had the stability to put those players together. And even bringing in last year with Beppe Iacchini, it didn't really fit, especially because they did make decent signings this season. Actually, it's going to be really interesting, a really interesting case study for the Bundesliga tax, watching Nico Gonzalez, who Bundesliga fans or avid watchers of the Bundesliga really raved over at Stuttgart. They were high counter-attacking team, and he was one of the main creative outlets for them. So seeing him in Serie A for a team that is pretty energetic, they do have a very very industrious midfield with the likes of Pulga, Amrabat. Castrovilli is a bit of a counterpoint to them, but they are predominantly hardworking. And that was kind of where, speaking of Vlahovic, and outside of the possible compatibilities or incompatibilities that he might face if he leaves, that's something where he was able to really prosper within that framework at Fiorentina. They're a tricky one. I really don't know what we're going to see from Fiorentina, and even last year, before they sold Chiesa, you didn't know what was going to happen with him, and he was playing as that right wing back on Bonaventura's side, and it functioned, and it did really well. But seeing how much scope does Gonzalez have coming into Fiorentina in comparison to those already embedded dynamics with the likes of Castrovilli and Jack, if he remains, let's say, a permanent figure in the starting 11, they're a tricky one. I frankly don't know if they're going to qualify in Europe or if they're even going to be who knows. But they're going to be it's an exciting watch, irrespective of how it goes.
They're going to be a very interesting watch. I mean, the first game against Roma this weekend is going to be a cracker. That's one thing we do know. It's going to be, I think that's the one game that really stands out for me this weekend, because, the Mourinho storyline, but also Fiorentina, we don't know what to expect, because if they came out and they made Europa League this season, I personally wouldn't be surprised. If they finished 8th, right? Yeah. And they went on a run and they count the table, okay, that's expected. That's Fiorentina. They should be up there. They should be competing with Sassuolo or be above.
They have a good enough squad.
Absolutely. Yeah. They should even be, we know how ambitious Commisso is. We know that his expectations, we should be pushing, top 7. We should be going after Lazio, going after Napoli, really trying to push these teams up, make them get even better. And they've got guys that can do it. But they lose Vlahovic, who's been scoring for fun this preseason. Have they got enough time to get somebody else? I have my doubts.
It's very Alexander.
They've got Alexander Cochran. They've got Jose Callejon, who's not your typical number 9. They're going to lose Kwame to Anderlecht as well. They've got to be quick. They've got to have something up their sleeve to make sure they get someone in and get someone in quickly. I think the appointment of Vincenzo Italiano shows a long-term approach different to what they've looked at with Iachini and Prandelli more recently. Vincenzo Italiano really impressed me at Spezia last season, did a really good job of keeping up not a very good team on paper. They were not, a team that
weren't impressive at all.
And they stayed up. I mean, this might work. He might actually get this team going. It might actually finally be the guy who gets it, because you look at these names who have come through. Paulo Sosa, Stefano Pioli, Montella came back. Iachini, Prandelli, Iachini is a bit of a trend of managers who are there as the quick fix. The quick fix, get us back up. It seems like now they've gone with that approach of, you know what, now we have to be patient.
Yeah, and it's the No, sorry, no, but like in terms of, and I think you raise a pretty good point in terms of long-term project, because the likes of your Atalanta, your Sassuolo's, irrespective of Sassuolo's connections, we'll get onto that later. But I think they've been able to leapfrog the likes of Fiorentina while they've undergone such chaos from an ownership standpoint and everything else. And I think stability is required if they are going to make their way back up the table. And I think that's something that the Commisso tenure in such a short time has gotten right, irrespective of signings. And they have been ambitious with signings, but I think it's the coaching dynamic that'll make that, that'll determine the quality of that.
Yeah, for me, I have them still around that lower mid-table. Again, they're not. I think it's just the Vlahovic exit might really stuff them around. So we'll wait and see. I think it'll be interesting to watch them this weekend. Moving on to Genoa, I mean, they're another one of those teams, nondescript, but they have some exciting players. They've actually brought in Salvatore Sirigu for free this off-season. They brought in Caleb Ecuadon from Trabzonspor. They signed Zinho Van Houtsten on loan from Inter, the young Belgian defender, and they offloaded Eldor Shmorodov for 17.5 mil to Roma, which is a big win for Genoa.
Are you serious?
I think it's a win in terms of the price figure. Okay. We're not in terms of the player. I think the player is a gun, but I'm saying in terms of what they've been able to get, that is good for a team like Genoa, able to now probably spread that amongst the stock.
Absolutely. And you know what? I think they'll make another windfall. Like if they give scope to someone like Yaya Kalon, who played very well in the cup. And he's come from their under-19 team. He's a baller, man. And look, I'm always a sucker for a diminutive left footer, but Yaya Kalon can play. But the absence of Shomurodov will be pretty big for them. Destro is going to be good for 2 games this season, like the 2 games against Milan. I don't know. Like they're going to be there is a vacuum that Shomurodov left, and it's going to be interesting to see how they fill it. Yeah,
I think. They finished 11th last season with this squad, which is pretty good considering the quality in this team is not inspiring. I mean, they're still relying on 37-year-old Goran Pandev. They've still got Destro, who, as you could say, 2 good games a year. Milan Badel, Valon Berami, guys that are probably past their best. It's a very steady worksman-like team. That's what Genoa have been and been so good at probably doing for quite a while, being able to defy by doing that. And also one thing which is interesting about Genoa, I think that Kalon might be that guy, because Genoa always seems to unearth a forward every year. That's sort of, they cash in on. We remember Christian Kwame, Christoph Piatek, and obviously more recently Shmorodov. Kalon could be that guy that we keep an eye on. So, I mean, Ante, if you've called it, I think that we've got to keep an eye on it. I think this is really exciting. Because to be honest, before this week in the Copa, I'd never heard of him until seeing him play, just seeing some highlights of him play.
He's a baller, man.
Yeah, he looks pretty good.
Baller, man.
For me, I think they're going to be in that mid-table bracket, probably more towards the bottom. It'll be interesting to see how they feel that Shmorodov sort of absence, but it's going to be a lot of reliance on sort of those older figures to really carry the load for them.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Moving on, Hellas Verona. No more Ivan Juric, which
Speaking of vacuums.
Yeah, that is bad because the guy they've brought in has literally not been able to steady anything for quite some time. Eusebio Di Francesco. Hellas Verona, for me, I used to love watching them play. As much as they were a hard team to play against,
No,
they had some really fun players.
Juric had done a fantastic job at Hellas, and irrespective of kind of the pragmatic base of his implementation, they played some good stuff, and not just like in transition, they played really good football at times. And it is going to be interesting to see him at Torino, and like there was that improvement even for Juric at Genoa. Even like he did relatively well with the players he had, and then there was a significant improvement at Hellas. Okay, irrespective of how he goes at Torino, it's going, like you said, there is that potentially troublesome dynamic with Di Francesco, because to be honest, like he did well at Sassuolo. That first season at Roma, he did relatively well. They got to the semi-final of the Champions League, but since then, like his stock has dropped significantly. There was that, that second season at Roma, like there was that increase in expectation, and he or his squad didn't really live up to it. He went to some, didn't work out at all. He was gone within 6 months. And now this is like a situation where it's kind of win or bust for Di Francesco.
Yeah.
And how that works, that kind of dynamic has always been an interesting one, like just from a personal standpoint, and looking at how teams function and how teams can live with certain pressures that the coach may or may not let's say extend to their players or project onto their players. I think Di Francesco at Hellas is one of the more intriguing subplots this season from a standpoint of the coaching merry-go-round that usually exists within Serie A. I don't think there's a middle ground with this one.
Yeah, I think it is win or bust for Di Francesco. If this doesn't work out, I think this is it for him in Serie A, unless he gets a team back up.
He goes to like Greece or like Turkey or something like.
Yeah, or he might even, God forbid, he might even end up in the A-League. Who knows? You know what I mean? Just in terms of some of the players. Anyways, in terms of there's one player that really stands out for me that I really enjoy watching is Mattia Zaccagni. I really wanted to see him get injured towards the latter part of the last season. I think he was very close to being at least in the provisional Euro squad for Italy. I think he's definitely, him and Barak are the two guys that sort of play in those forward roles that will be important for them. But now look who's leading the line, Ante, and it's still Nikola Kalinic.
And they were saying you should go back to Heidelberg this summer, man. Like, I don't.
That worries me.
Yeah, I'm not. Like they. At the same time, they do have decent individuals. Like they do have Lazovic. I'm a big fan of Lazovic. Veloso under Juric was a particularly compatible fit. Frabotta, I don't know how good an addition he'll be, and that's the same thing. That's the same deal with Kevin Lasagna as well. They're a bit of an unknown without Juric this season. But I don't think there's a middle ground with Hellas this season.
Yeah, and the thing is they're playing Sassuolo in that opening game of the season, which I think is going to be an interesting watch, because it's going to be, what are we going to get from Hellas Verona? What is it going to be under Di Francesco versus that Sassuolo team who, they're always exciting. You want to watch good football, you watch Sassuolo. So that will be really, really interesting watch over the coming days. But for me, Hellas Verona, they'll do enough to stay up this year again.
Absolutely.
Not relegation for me.
So they'll be safe.
Moving on. Yeah, we'll move on to the reigning champions, Inter, who, well, they've had an off season. And to be honest, the Milan fan in me, like, I can't believe I'm saying this, but to an extent, I feel sorry for them. They can't run it back to an extent. The loss of Lukaku, the loss of Hakimi, the Christian Eriksen situation. And if they lose Lautaro Martinez, that does break my heart for them, because you think about what that team, especially with Conte at the helm, what they could have done with a sustained run in the Champions League if Conte actually got his proverbial together in Europe. They've brought in Denzel Dumfries to replace Hakimi. They've brought in Edin Dzeko, who I still think can be very damaging despite his age. And they've brought in a guy called Hakan Çalhanoğlu, who we're not going to repeat his name too much more. Yeah, this team for me, I have my concerns, Ante. I'm not going to lie.
They've won a Scudetto on loan with no option to buy.
Yeah.
But like, but the thing about Dzeko is like he's clearly good, but he was clearly compatible for Roma, and that was like one of the big one of my big like points on Serie A. Let's say over the course of the last 3 seasons specifically, like how compatible the main strikers were at the big clubs and how much collectives worked around them. And that probably didn't apply to anyone more than Roma. I don't know how that dynamic changes with Inter, let alone how consistent Dzeko can play with, midweek Champions League games now at the age of 35. Low key, Inter have kept their best player in Brozovic. However
he's the heartbeat. He's the heartbeat.
However nuts he is, Brozo is like removing bias in all of this. I think he's the best defensive midfielder in the world. And this is even before Conte came in. Like he played at a similarly extraordinary level under Spalletti at Inter. How much the big dynamic for me in terms of how it all works collectively is, however unfortunate it is, Çalhanoğlu is not Christian Eriksen. And that was something that really clicked for them last season. The fact that Conte went away from playing Vidal and Barella together because they're essentially the same player. I don't know how that'll all work. Let's say if you do play a midfield of Çalhanoğlu, Barella, and Brozo. Although Brozo is pretty transformative as a defensive midfielder and working in a single pivot, Çalhanoğlu's not Eriksen as a creative force. He's a final ball, really. Final ball and a lot of pressing. Whereas Barella's a lot of pressing and that late entry into the box. You're not really going to get a lot of him in terms of the building or the creation of play. And that was where Lukaku did work for them, as a reference point for everyone else, and especially on Hakimi's, coming on to Hakimi's side. I don't know how Inter will go. What is for certain, they won't win the Scudetto again. They won't run it back, like you said. I do agree with you in that respect. But the question is, how big a drop-off is it?
For me, I think just a couple points. The one thing that irks me about people's sort of analysis of Nicola Barella is they get it so wrong. It's like how when people talk about Tonali and think because he looks like Pirlo, he plays like Pirlo. Barella is not like I remember so many times in the Euros people saying, Barella is Italy's creative sort of force, the guy who's going to create things for them. And I thought, are you just saying that because he's a diminutive sort of smaller midfielder that plays at the top, not at the base of the midfield, and your sort of view is that Jorginho only recycles possession and plays boring football, or what? Anyways, I can go on a rant about that all day, but I'm going to keep it sort of in the Inter realm. Yeah. The interesting thing that Inzaghi has done this off-season is, you mentioned sort of the reliance on Dzeko being the number 9. He sort of has gone to one striker this year, and the one player that he has reintegrated is Stefano Sensi. Yeah, who you remember a couple of seasons ago when he signed for Inter under Conte, he burst onto the scene. He had the injuries and he never got back. He just could not get back into the team. Now it seems like this is potentially his remontada, which I think is really exciting. If Sensi can find even just a little bit of that again, there is no way that Çalhanoğlu, that they could keep playing and keep relying on Çalhanoğlu. They won't have to. If Eriksen, look, there's so many different mitigating circumstances, but Sensi could replace that Eriksen sort of, that hole because of what he can offer going forward. But then you do admit, what's it going to look like in Champions League? Are they going to go back to two up top? Lautaro, is it just this because Lautaro's come back from the Copper and they're looking to try and, try different things because they have to rest him and get him back up to speed? Is he going to be there? That's a whole other question. And after that, it's very, very thin. I mean, Andrea Pinamonti is not the guy you want to be relying on in Champions League and Serie A.
There is the possibility that even Perisic goes up front for them.
I mean, they could, but it looks like he's still going to occupy that left-hand side. So it's then a matter of who then goes there.
Yeah.
Looking at this, is it Matteo Darmian who has to play on the left? Is it Danilo D'Ambrosio they shift out to the left, which is not necessarily the sort of player? Is it Valentino Lazzaro who's back at the squad now?
Yeah.
Like, how does this work? But, they've got issues. Or is it Alexander Kolarov that they, put into that position? Because we know that, he might not be able to run anymore, but he can still whip it across.
One thing that is for certain about Inter, the amount of Balkan players at that team, they're going to have a lot of great vibes, irrespective of how Inter go this season. I do agree with you on Sensi, especially in the fact that there was that, irrespective of, that eventual, end point under Conte of them winning the title under him, like there was that impression that he irrationally binned him and he had played well, especially in those first 2 months under Conte. He was exceptional, especially as that counterpoint to Brozovic, who is playing at, top 3 defensive midfielder in the world level. But there are a lot of unanswered questions with Inter at the moment, obviously, because we're at the start of the season under Inzaghi. But I still have them in contention for top 4. But there are certain things have to go their way, I'll say.
I think they're the one team in the top 4 that made it last season who's most likely to drop out to replace Napoli. And I'll get to why, sort of where those teams sit. But I think, with Allegri back at Juventus and Milan, I think can be even better this season. I can't see. I think based off the signings that are coming in, and we'll talk about Milan later because that's going to have a bit of time. But we'll get to that a bit later on.
Ink hasn't dried yet.
Yeah, well, we'll see. There's actually some Milan news that have just come through just now, but we'll get to that in just a moment. Juventus, let's get to them.
Okay.
They're next. We've got to go to the Death Star before we get to the light side. They've really only made one signing, Locatelli.
Via some innovative transfer dealings.
Yeah. I mean, Locatelli works when you put him next to 2 other guys that actually sort of suit how Locatelli's going to play. And if they're going with that so-called best midfield in the world with Rabiot and Bentancur, God forbid that midfield will be neglected till the day it dies.
Yeah.
For me, I think based off Juventus having Allegri at the helm, they're going to win. They're going to win games. And that's one thing we've got to remember. They're going to win games. It's not going to be nice. They're going to punch you in the teeth and they're going to let you know about it.
The thing that sucks about this season, like Juve are the Death Star again under Allegri. They're gonna find a way because he if there's one thing that you can say about Allegri, he might not be the most appealing from an aesthetic standpoint, if you want to call it that. But he maximizes his teams, however his teams are. And Allegri is, I think, you can safely say that he'll do that irrespective of, the potential imbalances of a squad like this, irrespective of whether Ronaldo stays or not. I think he will get the most out of Dybala, who unfortunately has seen he's become lost, let's say, specifically since the 2018 World Cup. And a player who, for his talent, doesn't deserve to be lost like this. And there was that, the Ronaldo signing did kind of accelerate that to a degree, but it was kind of already happening. I think that stops with Allegri. Dybala will have, he'll have a big season again, and Juventus will return to, let's say, a relative position of dominance again. I'm not yet keen to say they win the title, but I think they'll be much closer than last year.
Yeah, my only concern for Juve is their defensive depth. especially with Champions League and the aging legs. I mean, Mati Dalit,
especially losing Demiral as well.
Bonucci. Yeah, and Chiellini and Bonucci are coming off basically playing the entire Euros, and they had a bit of rest, but they're getting to that point. And when you've watched Bonucci in Serie A compared to what we saw at the Euros, he's been almost two different players. It seems like he gets galvanised by being in the setup. Chiellini gets injured so often now, we don't see it enough. Their fullback depth worries me. You know,
I think
there's still issues, you know, but yeah.
I think Bonucci, specifically over the last decade, is the clearest example at an elite level that centre-backs live and die off the midfield in front of him. And, you know, you saw that with Milan. You saw that like his differing ranges of form while at Juve as well. The difference that, you know, in his level playing for Italy in comparison to Juventus last season. Like if you put a good midfield in front of him, Bonucci will be fine. But I think specifically midfield composition will be massive for them. I do see I don't think he'll play, let's say, both Locatelli and Bentancur or both McKennie and Rabiot. Like he'll kind of choose between one out of those. Like he'll choose two out of those four, and it won't be like two of the, you know, similar players that I mentioned in those pairs. I think he will better integrate Dybala in a way that Sarri and Pirlo did not. He'll get the most out of this squad, irrespective of how imbalanced it is. And however reliant on certain players they are, he'll get the most out of them, irrespective of the fact that they're playing midweek as well. They'll be strong.
Yeah, sorry, go on.
No, go on.
I think just to end it there, I think they'll do well in Serie A, but I think in Europe they're round of 16, basically exit waiting from even group stage, depending on who they get. But that's how I see sort of their team. I still think they've got some real areas where they have to improve. But if anyone's going to get them good in Europe, get them back to that level and get them wins, it's Max. It's Mad Max. Of course, he'll be yelling day on the touchline for the second he runs out of breath. So moving on, and I have been very excited about this team. It's the return of Maurizio Sarri, and we finally agree with him back in Serie A after a season off. Sarri ball to the capital, Lazio this season. They've still got Luis Alberto, which I think is very good. I think the fact that they've kept him. Felipe Anderson returns for literally nothing compared to what they sold him for to West Ham. And this is, I think they're a very interesting case study. I think they're the team that are primed based off who they've brought in, who they've kept. But they could actually be a team that could push top four this year. But that'll be an interesting watch.
They're probably the most enigmatic team coming into this season. There are, let's say, two dynamics that really kind of stick out for me with respect to Sarri and his implementation and what we've come to know as Sarri's implementation. Because I don't think he inherently trusts Lucas Leiva as his six, or as, you know, as the deepest of his midfielders. And that's probably something that's informed them going after Tomášič from Bordeaux. It looks like they're going to bid 10 million for him. But even Tomášič, like coming into Lazio, he doesn't necessarily strike as a completely compatible fit for Sarri, as, you know, as his deepest midfielder. At the same time, however, he does have two of the best midfielders in the comp in Milinkovic, Savic, and Luis Alberto. The other positional dynamic for me, given the reality that they're going to play 4-3-3, is Immobile by himself up front. And I think that's, looking at the manner in which he was able to score so consistently under Inzaghi at Lazio, it's the fact that he had another reference point with him up front, in front of that, you know, pretty exceptional midfield in Serie A terms. Immobile by himself with his back to goal is something that I've never really been impressed with. But at the same time, I get the impression that they're going to be filtered a lot down that left-hand side, like you said, with Felipe Anderson and Luis Alberto. They're going to be, you know, really not necessarily reliant, but they're going to be predominant on that left-hand side. Then it'll be interesting to see how Tucu Correa, if he does play on the right flank, and Milinkovic Savic, who does have great late entry into the box, you do have the hallmarks of that starter layering that he's like to use in his implementation. But yeah, I think the two big ones for me are like, let's say, who they bring as the last midfielder for them, how Immobile then fits within that implementation, and a low key one, a chair to be in a 4.
Yeah, for me, that Immobile point is poignant because you just have to think back to the Euros. That's all you literally have to think back to. And you saw how he looked like a fish out of water in those knockout games, in particular, once they played better opposition.
Yeah.
He'll score against, your lower ranked teams. There's no doubt about it. He'll probably stats pad. He'll probably score a decent amount of goals because, he'll dominate against those smaller teams. When he comes up against well-organized defenses, that's my concern. I'm having a look at their last friendly against Sassuolo, and the interesting point is Luis Alberto still isn't starting for them, and neither is Correa.
Yeah, he wasn't training.
Alberto
wasn't training with them at one point. Yeah.
So there's still doubts over whether Luis Alberto actually stays, whether he wants to be there full stop, because I don't think he does. I think he's made it clear he wants to move, and there are teams that will spend for him.
Absolutely.
I think there are teams that definitely would, and because of the current market, his price is it's
like
high.
He's probably one of the most, if not like the most progressive midfielder in the top 5, let's say, over the past couple of seasons, from a standpoint of, in terms of getting the ball closer to goal. There really aren't many midfielders that are at his level. Like he's at like Verratti, Kimmich, De Bruyne levels of like a ball progression. But the difference between, let's say, a De Bruyne, he's an extraordinary mover without the ball, and he would fit within any team. He would be able to fit within Sardi's implementation because he is so flexible in that respect. As long as he has a runner behind him, I would say.
Yeah.
But the tricky one with Lazio, like you said, like the whole Immobile thing, coming back to that, and like that's where the narrative never really sat with me, talking about him, getting homesick when he left the street corner. Like he went to Sevilla, he went to Dortmund. He didn't play well, not because he was homesick. It was because of those it was because of his predisposition as a footballer. And like we've kind of seen that now playing in a different formation under Inzaghi. Yeah. How that works under Sardi, I'm very, very keen to see.
Yeah. Let's move on. You want to talk Milan? Let's talk Milan. We've probably got to, after speed it up a little bit, but we will save enough time for this. Just news that's come through. We know Milan have been looking for a third striker, and it looks like they're actually set to sign Pietro Pellegrini from Monaco as their third string striker. It looks like he's, we remember him from about 3 seasons ago, 16 years old, from Genoa, coming through and having that little run. He's set to leave. I think it's a third striker. I think, Milan do need someone to actually use a bit of a project up top. So don't think it's a bad move, but they're an interesting case study. I mean, for the last season and a half, post-COVID break to now, they have defied expectation with the squad they have, with the resources they have. They got the top 4. It's exciting they're back in the Champions League. Now it's a matter of backing up, because I think we both know that Stefano Pioli, he has his limits as a manager. He's a very good manager at, you're motivating and getting the team up. He's we talk about players manager, Stefano Pioli is that. Now, can he take this team from a team that was, hammered to the ground, getting results, to now actually being a team that can take that next step? Their off-season has been interesting. They lost Donnarumma. They brought in Maignan, which I think is a very good replacement. They brought in Olivier Giroud to replace Mario Mandzukic. If they wanted an experienced striker, they fit that experienced striker mold. Giroud has scored in pre-season, but is it going to happen in Serie A? And they've brought in, Brahim Diaz is back. They brought Balotore. Pobegga's back, but I think he's heading out on loan to, as we can say, Torino Atalanta might be one of them. So, and they've still got more business to be done. That's one thing that we've got to remember. Yeah. That's one thing. If you're watching this now, this is not the complete Milan team. What we can expect in 2 weeks' time.
If they sign Vlasic within the next couple of weeks, I think this transforms Milan significantly. He is the 10 that they have very much needed, and no, seriously, like in comparison to
you're right.
And I don't and like Milan fans have been big on, oh, where's our right winger? Why? I think they underestimate Selemakers, both from a standpoint of defensive and attacking capabilities. Attacking, he's probably one of Milan's best movers without the ball, and they function much better with him in the team, outside of the fact that, they press much better while he's in the team as well. Their striker, Milan's striker situation is a big one, especially now they're going to be playing midweek. And this is the kind of the leap in expectation for Pioli, because like you said, he has been able to motivate this team, and especially after, like, you think going back to when they copped 5 against Atalanta, coming into Christmas, a year and a half back, it's a very different Milan. However, this summer always struck me as a bit of a fork in the road for this squad, and this squad reaching its ceiling. I believe that we'll see a better Romagnoli this season. Look, the Donnarumma situation, I don't think Milan could have done much, because they've always they haven't had the best of relationships with Raiola. And it's not like Milan were the only club that have lost out to PSG without PSG spending any money with respect to transfer fees. They've priced everyone out of the market on the pure standpoint of wages, and Milan aren't the only ones here. However, I do feel that it was necessary from Milan's standpoint to set out a marker with respect to Raiola, because if Raiola got his way with Donnarumma, then, there would have been the likelihood that it would have happened with Romagnoli as well. The big one for me is if Benacer stays fit. Benacer is already the best midfielder in the comp outside. Like, outside of Brozovic, who is a specific defensive midfielder, in terms of how complete a midfielder Benacer is, like, he's already that. He's the most complete midfielder in the comp.
Yeah.
And whether he stays fit is a big one, because Milan suffered significantly after he went down in that game against Napoli, heading into the second half of the season. And that's one thing you have to kind of consider with Pioli. Like, he got Milan to run off the smell of an oily rag going into that second half of the season. Yeah. There were a lot of injuries, and he was able to get the most out of that squad. But with the rise in expectation, can Pioli handle that? That's probably the biggest plot point for Milan going forward.
I think the one game that summed it up, there was this game against Hellas Verona last year where he had, Rade Krunic at left wing, and Samu, and Diogo Dalot, I think, was even playing at right wing at one point. There were so many players out because of obviously the congested fixture last year. That was beyond that. Every team faced that, but Milan sort of, they were very weak with their depth.
Yeah.
And they found a way to get it done. I think it's interesting because there's a lot of reliance as well at the moment on development of Brahim Diaz, and they've put a lot of faith giving him that number 10 jersey as well. I think his second half of the season was as good as any youngster that we've seen. There's that last patch. He put together a fantastic body of work. I think a lot of praise always goes towards Franck Kessie. I like what Kessie offers the team, but he offers a lot more when he has Benacer in the team with him because of what them two offer as their tandem. They work so well in tandem. But the big caveat in all this is African Cup of Nations in January. They're going to lose both.
Yeah.
Kessie's out for the start of the season. Tonali, big pressure, big time for him. He has to take this opportunity to make that his own. We know they're going to probably bring in Adli or Bakayoko as well. How does that fit in? Do they keep Pobega? You mentioned Romagnoli. Does he displace Tomori, who I think is going to keep getting better? I think it'd be good for him to displace Kier because Kier's gone through a long Euros, a long season. You don't want to have Kier playing every game. You want Kier, you want to save him up, play him when you really have to. I think this is going to be a very interesting time because if they do get Vlasic, as you mentioned, it feels a massive game.
They become...
Çalhanoğlu last year... Yeah, Çalhanoğlu last year, statistically, if you look at it from face value, you think he was fantastic. But when you watched him, his attitude, his inability to, sort of circulate possession, get in the right areas, slow with the ball as well. it didn't really work out. And when they lost Zlatan as that focal point, they looked lost up top as well, playing Rebic or Leao. They need to find out how this is all going to work without Zlatan.
Yeah.
What are they? Is Giroud the answer long term? Like, for the most of this season, it's a big, as we speak, enigma. Milan is still a big enigma, but I still think they're going to do enough to make top four this year with the players that they are set to bring in.
I don't know. I don't think top four is secure for Milan.
It's not secure, but
it's not. It's absolutely not a certainty. I think that's another case for the argument of signing Vlasic. I think during AFCON, you can maintain flexibility there because you can go with, let's say, Tonali as a lone 6 and play Vlasic as an 8. And even play Vlasic. You can try him as a double pivot. Bakayoko absolutely, like in the event they get him, I think there is optionality there. But I think at the end of the day, there is a big difference between Milan with Selemakers and Benacer in the team and Benacer and Selemakers not in the team. I think that especially from an attacking standpoint, they became inherently reliant on there as a left back. And if you're reliant on a left back to create a lot for you in attack, then it doesn't really look good for the rest of the team. And that's where, like you said about Hakan, I don't like, he's a great final ball, but that doesn't necessarily mean he's let's say a creative player in the standpoint of the grunt work in creation of play. And without Benacer as well, I think the thing about Milan, their strongest attribute was their pressing. But without Benacer, they lose that ability to really guard against that ball into their defensive half. And I think that's where the difference with Milan came when it was, let's say, Kessie and Tonali playing as a double pivot behind Hakan. Like that first ball into the opposition half, that's where Milan really struggled because that's where Benacer is fantastic already at this stage in his career. He's so good at picking up that, knowing when to step onto that pass. His positioning is extraordinary, both in defensive and attacking standpoints, and their ceiling, rests on him in the event that they don't sign Vlasic. Yeah.
Well, 2 points just to quickly make. I don't think there's been another underappreciated player in Milan fandom than Alexis Salamakers. I think that's one thing for certain. I think he's extremely underappreciated. And secondly, I think it's just going to be great to see Milan also back in the Champions League. I think the Champions League has lost that sense of richness without Milan, the Champions League. That first game at the San Siro with the Champions League anthem, the fans, the Curva Sud, full, the Tifos and everything, it brings chills. It's exciting for Milan fans. It's going to be an interesting season.
I think it's
the least. You got one more point before we move on?
No, just to piggyback on what you said about the Champions League, it's going to be the one time I'm going to be okay with not hearing the Serie A anthem before a Milan match. Like when they play that first time in the Champions League, it's bloody awesome to have them back in the Champions League, man. And I can't wait. I cannot wait. And
it's such a shame that the two stalwarts really in Bonaventura and Donnarumma aren't going to be part of that because they've been there for so long and
the banter era was long. The banter era was
We'll remember that. But moving on now to a team I think is going to be super exciting this year, and that's Napoli. Under Luciano Spalletti this season, look, this team, the return, having Victor Osimhen is like, this is his first season, I reckon, really. Last season was a false dawn with the COVID and the injuries and everything else that he faced. Fabian Ruiz as well, back and forth.
Like that.
This is going to be
season.
A fun Napoli team.
Yeah, I think they're going to be really strong. But at the same time, like you always get the sense that Napoli is going to challenge finally for the Scudetto, and they just kind of fall away. Last season was more a logistical thing because, like you said, that period where Osimhen and Fabian went out, were unavailable, due to contracting COVID, there was a 2-month period, and their season, like the wheels fell off the wagon in that respect, because heading into November, they were just about the strongest team in the league, and that's what was so coming back to Milan, that's what made that performance against Napoli so impressive. Because Napoli were, just about the informed team in the competition when they smacked Atalanta early in the season. Osimhen and that compatibility, or that tandem between Fabian Ruiz and Bakayoko is going to be interesting to see if either of Diego Demme or Lobotka really fit next to Fabian Ruiz at the base of, if Spalletti goes with that double pivot. I think he's going to get the best out of Osimhen. Osimhen's going to be, personally, I think he's going to get Capo Cannoniere this season, if he stays fit for the whole year. I think,
I think they've got a really exciting front line. Full stop. Yeah, I agree. Insigne coming off a great Euros. Chucky Lozano, I think, still can offer them something. Dries Mertens, he's getting older, but he's still there. Politano, I think, had a really good year last year.
Politano was a good fit for them, man.
Interesting one. Yeah. And we know what Zielinski can offer from, sort of his attacking sort of aspect, late runs and everything else. So this is interesting. I think we can both agree top 4 this year.
If they stay fit, they go close to winning the title. I'm very big on Napoli under Spalletti, and very big on Osimhen under Spalletti. I think if they stay fit, they'll be very strong, and they'll be there, come May. And if there's the Scudetto's there to be won, I think Napoli's there in that conversation if they stay fit.
That's exciting, because how many times have they had, career seasons, or what you want to call, like, history-breaking seasons, and they just haven't won it because the Death Star just have gone to another level. Let's move on to Roma. Like, even these guys as well, they know what it's like to get the big amount of points but just fall short, because Juve have done it all and, broken their record on top of another record. Roma this season under Jose Mourinho, this is exciting, because I think Mourinho back in Serie A, again, sentimentality, we talk about that. This is going to be fun. I think that's one thing, because Roma haven't been fun for the past few seasons, and they've signed some fun players. We spoke about Schmodogov before, but they brought Tammy Abraham in too. This is, I'm excited for Roma.
They're going to be exciting, but not necessarily for footballing means. Like, irrespective of where they finish on the table,
from the Mourinho.
They're going to be box office, irrespective of how well they play. Mourinho back in Italy is awesome, but I don't know. I really don't know how well they're going to do, if they do well at all. And speaking of, like, and we kind of touched upon it with Fiorentina, I think we get that even more with Roma. Like, what are they? They've always been in this kind of, let's say, ideological, or, from a standpoint of identity, they've been very chaotic, especially since, especially since that whole ordeal with Di Francesco. They went with Fonseca. They never really seemed sold on him. And now they've gone for this, like, inherently pragmatic shithouser in Mourinho. And you do have this striker dynamic with them. And you're not necessarily certain who's going to start out of Shomurodov and Tammy Abraham. They both have very positive attributes and very distinct qualities that they can provide a squad, especially within a 4-2-3-1, which they will likely play under Mourinho. I don't necessarily know, outside of who plays up front, where are their goals going to come from.
Yeah, I think that it's going to be a lot of reliance on Nicola Zaniolo finding his feet straight away. Yeah, and he hasn't played for 2 seasons. That's one thing we've got to remember. He's a new signing, but he hasn't played in 2 seasons.
Yeah, and
Henrik Mkhitaryan as well. And also they've been playing a lot of El Shaarawy in that 4-2-3-1. There's a lot of reliance on 3 guys that you can't really rely on if you're going to make those sort of headway.
And another big thing, especially, I know a lot of that helped with formation. But the ability for Cristante to come into, some kind of prominence. And that was the same thing with Spinazzola. He really worked in the three under Fonseca. And although, there are different positional dynamics for when he comes back from injury, that's a pretty big out for Roma. And so whether they hit the ground running under Mourinho is a big one. Because if they don't hit the ground running, then you have this potential for like the circus coming to town in the Roma.
Well, you could just imagine, they lose that first game. There's gonna be questions already. We spoke about that game.
Speaking of stock dropping, like with Di Francesco, this is another one with Mourinho. Like, can he cut it at this level anymore? Can he cut it in club football? This is it. Really. This is it.
If it doesn't work, I think he's going to either end up at an international team or he's going to the MLS. Like, that's Mourinho. MLS is Mourinho. He, honestly, I think that Spinazzola absence is massive, just based off the summer he had. But the thing is, though, even if he stayed fit, who knows if he's actually still there? Because there were rumblings that teams were going to sign him. Either way, that seems like they're planned for it. They brought Matias Viña in, Uruguayan left back, who'll probably get the first nod. I haven't seen much of Viña, so I can't really comment, but it will be interesting to see how they go in those first few games.
A lot seems reliant. A lot seems reliant on Zaniolo, like you said, coming back and immediately hitting his straps. Because outside of that, there isn't a lot of goals in this team, and I don't think they're like. And although Mkhitaryan played well, it was more from a standpoint of him being a reference point for everyone else to work off. And that was the big one. Let's say with not just with Cristante, but Pellegrini as well. Pellegrini was able to make that real late entry into the box in the same, like in that 3-4-3, in the same way that, let's say, a Pasalic could at Atalanta. They were very similar in that respect. I think it's going to be exciting irrespective of how it goes. I think they'll be box office.
Yeah, I just can't wait for that first press conference. I cannot wait. Just the
Italian media is going to be great.
Look, I tell you what, I'm having a look at Roma's first few games, and you can't go that much further than they've got a Rome derby at the end of September, and that in itself, if he's able to get a win in that's match day 6, gets a win in that Rome derby, you've won the fans, and that is going to be massive based on what we said about.
Like you could envisage
got to
this
get
scenario.
them on side early.
Yeah, you could envisage this scenario where they don't necessarily. They kind of sputter their way through the opening month, and then you've got Rome derby after a month and a half, and that's big. That can determine whether Mourinho stays or not. Essentially,
and
I can completely envisage that scenario.
Ripping these ones out. He's going to start ripping this to the Lazio fans. I cannot wait. Let's move on now. This is a real throwback for probably fans of Serie A going way back, probably to our parents' generation. Ante Salernitana back in Serie A. Historic club in Italian football, but they obviously went bankrupt a very long time ago, back in the big time. And Fabrizio Castori, he got them up last season. They play a very pragmatic defensive style based off what I've read. They've signed Simi from Crotone, an absolute goal machine for the lower ranked teams, obviously Crotone for so long in Serie A and Serie B. They play in a beautiful part of the world in Salerno. I definitely vouch for that. It will be a fantastic away day, but that's all I see. Because to be honest, I genuinely think, I wouldn't be surprised if they stayed up because they just play such boring football. They grind enough points to stay up. But for me, based off their squad, the relegation is looming. I think.
They were, like you said, I think they were very pragmatic in Serie B. I think the only thing they add to this season is a derby with Napoli. That's about it. Yes. That's about it. I think that's we lost the only thing.
we get Salerno, which is probably even just as big. I mean, it would have been great to have all three, but
I don't know.
We love our derbies, but I think relegation. Yes.
I'm with you.
moving on, we sort of moved past these sort of teams, but now we're back to sort of the later part, and it's Sampdoria now.
We got the meat in the sandwich now of the league.
Yeah, now we've got the crap part of the bread now, and Roberto D'Aversa, the new manager of Sampdoria, takes over from Claudio Ranieri. We saw him at Parma. He moved on because apparently he wasn't excited about the job, and this in itself, looking at Sampdoria, they're not very exciting. They've kept Mikel Damsgaard, who everyone fell in love with at the Euros. Surprisingly enough, I'm very surprised. We were saying up there that we're surprised that a Premier League team like an Aston Villa or mid-table team didn't spend 35 million.
Surely someone would have overpaid.
Yeah, but they're still relying on Quagliarella and Gabbiadini to score the goals. And to be honest, again, mid-table.
Yeah,
mid-table.
I think, like you said, without the the Damsgaard overpay, irrespective of that, it would have been actually very interesting to see whether Medilera stayed, but he went to Brescia.
Yeah.
Like we said on air, he would have been a really good squad piece for Sampdoria. But I think at the end of the day, they're going to be relying on Candreva whips into the box and Gabbiadini and Quagliarella up front. They're going to get points here and there against weaker teams than them, but they're going to be pretty nondescript against teams stronger than them. They'll be they could not be a more inherently mid-table Serie A team, and Damsgaard is a mid-table Serie A excellence.
I really miss we're talking about sort of late 2000s Italian football. I do miss the Sampdoria days of Pazzini and Castano. I'm Angelo Palombo in midfield, and now seeing them, it's like you used to be something, and now there's just nothing to them. They're just there. They're furniture, it feels like, and it's a shame. But hopefully this year they can maybe somehow, defy logic. Moving on, this is one team I genuinely am always excited to talk about. Someone's a little bit too much. It's Sassuolo. Now, they've lost Locatelli. They've brought in Matias Henrique, who was actually at the Olympics of Brazil, which is, I think, an interesting signing in itself. But they've also signed Gianluca Scamacca. Now, I believe it might actually be the loan deal. It's just his loan deal. They've just brought him back from Genoa.
Considering they haven't got any money from Juventus.
Yeah, and they may lose Berardi for a decent amount, but they've still got some decent players up top.
They have very good. That front four is still very strong for them.
Yeah.
I think Enrique is as good a signing you can get in this climate. Having sold Locatelli, irrespective of them not getting the money for another couple of years. The fact that they kept Jeremy Boga. Atalanta went hard for him early in the transfer window. I think it was they put in a 20 million euro bid for him early. Jeremy Boga is going to be great. But Raspadori is another one who hasn't really received a lot of scope for Sassuolo over the past couple of seasons, but I think he can have a pretty strong season. Whether he can be used in tandem with Scamacca, that'll be an interesting one. I do like Sassuolo. They're still going to be strong, but they're not going to be they're not going to play the box office football that they did under De Zerbi. And they'll be strong, but how strong is the question with Sassuolo? They'll be up, mid to upper table, but
I mean, Sassuolo always look, for those managers, they're going to play a bit more progressive football. I mean, they did get Dionisi in, who plays, apparently he's the De Zerbi clone, basically.
A lot of rotations.
They're going to play especially against the weaker sides. They're going to look like world beaters. They're going to probably put in a couple performances against some big teams, and they'll really shock. I think that they'll again be exactly where they are now, eighth, ninth, and they'll be better than that mid-table logjam, but they just won't be good enough to push Europa League this season.
I agree.
Yeah. Spezia, we're getting towards the end now. They stayed up really last season. Just after, everyone thought they were going down. They've got Thiago Motta now as the coach. He gets his second chance. I mean, he's got one of the weirdest philosophies in football in terms of how he's going to play. But they've actually been hit with a 2-year transfer ban due to apparently signing illegally 13 underage players from Nigeria, meaning that they can't sign anyone now for the rest of this period. for me, that has all the hallmarks of being completely doomed to bottom of the table.
I think they go straight back. I think they go straight. I think they go down. They somehow stayed up last season, and like they did just enough. I think Spezia go down.
I don't know how they beat Milan in that one game. It still haunts me. But, look, I don't want to spend too much time on them. No. They can go back to Serie B next season. This team I'm actually excited for this year because of their managerial appointment. That's Torino. Ivan Juric comes in, and I really hope he wipes the slate clean with them because this team has quality. Andrea Bellotti is still there. I think this is his final season because his contract finally ends at the end of the year. And no one was going to spend the 100 million that Umberto Cairo was asking for, or Urbano Cairo was asking for so long. But this team under Ivan Juric, as we speak about, teams that are interesting to watch, they'll get results.
Yeah. I'm very effusive with respect to Ivan Juric, irrespective of, I'm very critical of Croatian coaches. You know me well enough that I'm very critical of Croatian coaches. I think, long line of pragmatic coaches, like Juric is a good hire for Torino. And I think, he was the kind of coach that Fiorentina should have gone after. But I think Torino have done well. I think he can kind of maximize what Bellotti means for Torino as a reference point. He's the alpha and omega for Torino and has been for a very long time. I'm not big on the Piazza signing. He's suffered a lot of injuries, and what he was around 2016 before that first knee injury compared to what he is now, he's a far different player. I'd love it if Piazza, played consistently at a decent level, but I don't know. But I think what we will get from Juric, I think he'll maximize this squad, and I think they'll be strong enough to at least be in that kind of frame for the last Europa League spots. They'll pick up points.
That high jump, yeah. Well, I think that we remember Torino a few years ago, even after Ventura, they were still a very hard team to play against. They lost that, I think, recently. I think bloody hell, my mind's gone blank. Marco Giampaolo last season really was a bad signing.
That was from day one.
Really, they were doomed to fail from that moment, losing Mazzarri and the post Ventura era, etc. They haven't been able to find their feet again, but I think they'll be an interesting watch this year. I think that they've got an interesting first game as well. I'm pretty sure that they play. They've got Atalanta in the first game. Now that's going to be that will be the test, because if Juric sets up as defensive as he is, it'll be interesting to see Atalanta counteract that. So,
and the thing about Juric, there are a lot of comparisons to him and Gasperini, going over the last couple of seasons in terms of implementation. They're far less. Probably the main thing about Juric, it's they are absolutely formidable in a block. They're at a base level, I think that's what's going to pick Torino. That's going to get Torino points. I think defensively, Juric's defensive implementation, they're very strong in a block. I think they're probably, it's him and Semplici in terms of putting a block together and really saying, you know what, play through us. But Juric also has what we kind of saw at Hellas. I know it's a different dynamic, a different club, different players, dictate different implementations, but I think he's a very savvy hire for Torino, and I think they'll be strong. They're relatively strong in comparison to the past couple of years.
Absolutely. Let's move on to a team that we both don't want to talk about, but we have to. Udinese.
What them to get relegated so bad?
Yeah, look, we probably both do, but the fact is they probably won't, because talk about setting up a block. This is the third spoke to that: set up a block and come at us. What have you got? Luca Gotti epitomizes that. And Udinese, they lost Rodrigo De Paul. That's an that's a big loss, but they haven't really replaced him, which is big. Like they haven't really been able to get anyone because who
They
wants
don't
to come and play there?
They don't have enough of the ball to necessitate replacing
like
him.
which midfielder's going to want to come and play there?
Look at
I think
like
this is,
Go on,
I think that this year that they'll still probably be in around that bottom area, but they'll do enough to stay up this year. And I don't want to spend too much time.
They're a bad team, but there are teams worse than them.
Yeah,
in Serie A this season, and I think that'll be enough for them just to stay up. Like they'll stay up getting like I think they stay up getting 35 points. You know what I mean? And like getting to that 35, like I don't think they break 40 points, but they'll still stay up. I think I think this season in Serie A, I think it's going to be more of a disparity. However competitive the league it is, I think the gap widens because you do have your Salernitana, even going to Venezia, Empoli, who knows how strong they're going to be. Spezia probably got worse. Udinese, have gotten worse as well. So I think you have like a bottom five, six, and I think Udinese are part of that group.
They're really such a far cry from that team under Spalletti in the early 2000s and the team at the start of the 2010s, which, made Champions League. They made the qualification, I think, in 2012, when they had the likes of Natale, Alexis Sanchez. They just seem like they've moved away from that identity of being more. They were probably more like the Sassuolo in terms of the exciting, they had exciting players, but now they're just the anti of that. It's the epitome of, you live long enough to see yourself become a villain, and they've become that.
Yeah, I think I can't remember who they lost to in that qualifier. I think it was Werder Bremen in 2012. Is like the last qualification stage.
Good question. That would have been 2012. I'm pulling this up on the fly. It was so 12-13 was the season they had the playoff, and they lost against Braga on penalties.
Oh.
Yeah, so they drew both games 1-1, and then they got bundled. They got spanked in the Europa League by Liverpool and Angie when they had everyone.
But
the team in the football graveyard. So
I personally believe that they've experienced a lot of counter to the narrative of them having their own stadium and being a stable club. Like they have been very unstable from a standpoint of managerial or like coaching hires, playing like squad composition. Like they have signed good players and have not maximized them or even utilized them. Like, and I know this is an inherently this is one for the brand and the agenda, but like how they massacred my boy in Andrea Balic, they deserve to go down. Like what happened with Tudor and Massimo Ordo as well. But you know what you're going to get out of Atalanta this season. Getting a block, play through us if you can, but we know we're good enough for a point.
Yeah. Well, since the days of Francesco Guidolin, who was the manager, obviously, was at Swansea more recently, they've had 10 managers, the likes of Stramaccioni, Di Canio, Iachini, Dalneri, Odo, Tudor, as you mentioned, Davide Nicola, and now Luca Gotti, who has probably lasted the longest out of all of them. So hopefully this is it. Someone needs to put them down. Moving on to the final team before we get to final predictions. We'll get Josh in just a second as well. Now, to talk about away days, I can't think of a better away day. To get to Venezia's home ground, you actually have to get on a boat. That's in itself, that is an amazing away day. Like, they're also a very historic Serie A team. It's good to see them back in the big fight. They probably have the best drip out of any team. Like, they have the best kit.
Especially going to Cup this season. But...
Yeah, and the thing is, they've already appealed to the football hipsters, and they've done well with who. Like, I think they have made great signings in terms of marketing. They've signed 2 Americans and said, we've got 2 Americans, let's get to the US market. And also, I think their owner, or their chairman, he's an American businessman. So you just know that there are ties there, that they've got their business in order. But whether it happens on the field in the Paolo Zanetti is an interesting one.
Sorry, go on.
This is going to be interesting. They're going to be an interesting case study, I think, this season. They signed Mattia Caldara on loan. That's one of the players that really stands out. Francesco Forte is their main number 9. Other than that, they don't really have too many household names, but this is going to be an interesting one. They've also got Arno Sigurdsson on loan from CSKA Moscow as well, teammate of Nikola Vlasic. So I'm interested to see how that all plays out.
Well, like they couldn't, like CSKA's teammates couldn't wipe their proverbials without Vlasic, so it's going to be interesting to see Sigurdsson play at Venezia.
Yeah.
It's great to see them back on a primary basis. It's really cool to see Venezia back. In the same way that it would be cool to see, let's say, a Bari back.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They just have a pedigree or a prestige with respect to the Serie A. And you bring up like one of the more interesting developments in Serie A is like, the return of, like, let's say, Italian American ownership and the willingness to invest back into, let's say, the motherland from the Italian diaspora. Like you saw that with Pallotta, you see that with Comiso as well to an extent. Like it's really cool. Like as as ourselves, as members of respective diasporas, it's really cool to see that investment back into Italy and that connection back to Italy, and not just necessarily a connection, but a tangible desire to build a connection from that respect. I think that's really cool, and Venezia, are another example of that. I don't know whether they stay up. Like they're going to be in that, like I said, that bottom 5-6. But it would be really cool for them to stay up because I think something the Serie A has shown over the past couple of years, like you're not a guarantee to go straight back down.
No,
like there is always like one, maybe two out of that three who stay up. And
there's usually one that defies, that does really well. Like that really pushes, that will finish in mid-table. And to be honest, out of the three, there's something about Venezia that sort of sits with me and thinks this team has their proverbial together. Yeah. That this team really, I think the excitement, you speak about heritage, they are a team that belong in Serie A. They are part of they are part of that. So it'll be exciting to see. They play in a stadium of only 7,000, so it's going to be raucous in there. It's going to be tight knit. It's going to be fun to watch them. I really want them to stay up. I really do.
I do too.
Well, we've gotten through everyone. Let's welcome Josh in. He's sat patiently for an hour and a half. He's listened to us ramble. Josh, I guess firstly, welcome. Can we get you, mate?
Yeah, I just got to make sure the audience can hear you as well. There we go. All right.
There we go. Welcome. I mean, you've listened to us chat for an hour and a half. Has anyone caught your fancy as, you said that you're kind of the Prem fan. There's a different term that us Serie A fans usually, it's Prem and another sort of suffix. I don't really want to repeat on air. But has anyone caught your fancy, I guess, first of all?
Well, I'm hoping you guys can help me with that because I've got some quickfire categories that I'd like to run through with you. A sort of beginner's guide to Serie A fandom, if you will. And then maybe based on those categories, I'll try and pick a team to follow this season in Serie A. So I want to start with, because we know it's not all about the on-field storylines. In fact, much the opposite often in Italy. The most off-field drama, which is going to be the most turbulent club behind the scenes this season.
Roma, for sure, man. If they lose a couple of games, I'd say Roma. And very well with Jose. We've seen it. I think if the proverbial it's a fan be Roma.
Roma or Inter with the ownership, dilemmas that they've had with the fans wanting to basically oust Zhang. I think it's either like a line ball between Roma and Inter.
Will the Inter ultras riot? Because they've already replaced a 115 million euro striker with a 35-year-old free transfer.
I reckon it'll be interesting to see the Tifos this weekend. They're playing at home. I mean, it's supposed to be the unveiling of the Scudetto, first chance in front of fans. Yeah. I'm interested to see how the fans respond to this because they barely got a taste of Conte and Lukaku, and they had to sit at home with that. Be intrigued to see how that all plays out this weekend.
Oh, sorry, go on.
Go on, Ante, please.
I think if there's something that can kind of smooth certain tensions, I think it's they got the hire right in Inzaghi.
Yeah.
I think he can be like a conduit between, let's say, club as an entity and fans, especially in such a potentially turbulent season.
All right, what's going to be the biggest media spat? It's going to be Mourinho and somebody, but Mourinho and whom?
Oh.
You know how much it sucks that Mourinho and Conte aren't in the same league?
Yeah,
I was going to
with another
say.
coach. Is it with another coach, Josh?
It could be a
That's an
coach, could
interesting
be a
one because,
player. It's going to be somebody. I just want you guys to tell me who it's
well,
going to be.
I think that the him and Sardi dynamic will be interesting. You know, the Roma Lazio sort of, you know, that first derby of interest. We know Sardi is a character, right? We know that will be in itself an interesting subplot. It's interesting because you're not going to sort of see that with Pioli's a very cool, calm, and collected media person compared to what you see on the touchline. Inzaghi, he's a bit snide, but I think it will mainly be the Mourinho-Sardi combination. I think one big spat in the first derby, and it's going to be bang, box office.
Because like in multiple terms, they are really opposites. Like especially like in footballing senses. How they deal with the media, like Sarri is very like he's cool, but you still see this underlying passion in him, whereas like Mourinho is just an overt troll in any circumstance, serious. And then, you know, when it starts to go pear-shaped for him, he'll become even more let's say attacking in non-footballing means. I think that's like if there's going to be a spat, it'll be between them.
Depends if Sarri's wearing enough nicotine patches or not. All right, I want to know what the hipsters'
He'll be
choice...
able to probably smoke in some stadiums. I wouldn't be surprised.
I want to know the hipsters' choice team. We've had Atalanta, of course. I think there was a little bit of hipster momentum around Sassuolo last season, but what's going to be the sort of Mundial mag team to follow this season?
Milan.
Venezia.
Milan. Like, I think, especially like, let's say if they sign Vlasic, like analytics Twitter is all over Milan at the moment, and they will influence football Twitter. And like,
they will combust if Vlasic signs.
The penny, like, it's like, however well Benasset has played over the last year and a half, it's like the penny's starting to finally drop for football hipsters on Milan. Like, oh wow, they're good. You know. I think it's going to be Milan, especially now with De Zerbi leaving Sassuolo and like all those hipsters migrating to the Ukraine as well with him.
Yeah. Well, they're either migrating in the Ukraine or they're meddling. They're just waiting for this weekend and sort of saying, I think it will be Venezia for the kits.
Yeah.
I think you'll see a lot of their merch sales will be ridiculous. If they capitalize on streetwear, they are going to make a killing. And I think you'll see them on Mundial mags. You'll see them everywhere. You'll see models wearing them. I'm telling you, I'll even buy probably a bit of cap of merch myself. So I think, Venezia for me.
Well, you've just answered my next question, which is best jerseys.
100% Venezia.
My next category is the fine wine. And this is the player who's going to defy age once again and have a season to remember. Italy's famous for these players. I don't know whether it's Milan's superior dentistry or whether there's something in the air in Tuscany. Who's going to be it could be someone who we've already seen do it for years and years.
I think because he won't play every game this year based off because they've signed someone else. And they're not going to have to rely on him to play every week. I think it will be Zlatan for his goal-to-game ratio. I still think that he's got this aura about him that he just knows how to... The thing is, he's obviously not the same Zlatan as he once was, but he will draw defenders. I think his aura in terms of being able to draw players to him and open up space for others. And, you know, I still think he's got that bit of magic in him that he'll have a big moment in a big game and it will be up here. And what he does up here is so important. You'll see... Before they play Juve, he'll be barbs at Ronaldo. It'll be Milan derby. Will be, you know, he'll be starting a fight with probably Çalhanoğlu. I think it'll be interesting to see, but I think it'll be Zlatan. I can still see him scoring double figures this season. He won't play every week, but I can still see him having an impact despite his age.
I think, I'm in agreement. Zlatan, the cool thing about Zlatan, even though he's, you know, pushing 40, like he wants the ball, and that's something that, you know, like like there is, if you have a player who can move without the ball and then accept the ball under pressure and keep the ball under pressure, you're going to be durable, irrespective of how, you know, fit or unfit you are. Like you're going to help. However, like that's the that's kind of the interesting thing about, looking at Milan. Giroud, who is basically the same player as Mandzukic, you're really going to get like one good game 3 because they're just battering rams as strikers. I'll say Zlatan. I agree.
I like it. All right. Who's going to be the biggest export based on their performances this season? Who's going to garner the largest transfer fee if they're not sold before the deadline, of course?
So someone who gets sold during the season. Well, I'm actually,
or even at the end of the season next summer.
Well, interestingly enough, Komiso just came out. I was just checking Twitter and said, I don't think he doesn't want to sell Vlahovic. He wants to keep him for one more season. So that answers it. He'll have a great season in Serie A, and I think that they'll cash into the Prem, big sum, and Fiorentina will make good money off that. So I'm going Dusan Vlahovic as the number one. It's hard to. I think if it's not him, it might be Jeremy Boga.
I think the balance of financial power to the Premier League will be confirmed or reaffirmed with Chiesa going for big money.
Stealing a player from Juve.
Forgot about Chiesa, yeah.
Yeah, I think if there's anyone who goes for big money, it's Chiesa.
Yeah. I could see Chiesa ending up at one of the London teams.
Because his pace and power, everything a Premier League club would want, man.
Yeah. He would thrive in the Prem, and that's the thing. That,
Italian
that he would be an absolute world beater there. Yeah, Italian the boo. But I think that it's interesting with Chiesa because I think like his Euros was so good because of just he had those moments of brilliance. But you watch it over a 90-minute period. Yeah. That game against Spain, he really wasn't that great. He just had one moment. That's all it took was one moment. He was anonymous. Yeah. And I remember saying it to so many of my mates that were at Ligon, and they'd say, why isn't Chiesa playing? Why are they persisting with Berardi? And I felt so like, I didn't feel that sense of vindication because Chiesa played so well. But it was like, you obviously don't watch enough Serie A. You need to actually watch him for Juve, because I would not be surprised if he really struggles against some teams this year when they set up defensively. They put it. He has to be something in possession. It'll be interesting, but I could definitely see him. I would have said Manchester United a few months ago, but now because they've signed Sancho, I can't see that happening. Yeah. I think it would probably be more than likely like a Tottenham or an Arsenal or something like that.
Someone will overpay for him.
Who will progress 100%. Furthest in Europe? It could be. I'm not going to talk about the Conference League, but Europa League or Champions League. It's the most
prestigious of European competition.
That's interesting because I don't think Inter have what it takes this year in Europe. I think it's going to be interesting with them. Juve or Milan? I think that Milan could actually, depending on who they get, I reckon they could really do some damage because of the feeling of them being back in the Champions League. I reckon there'll be a real sense of having to come to the San Siro and beating Milan in the Champions League. There's something about playing games there. We spoke about it before. Juve in itself, Allegri will be able to get results. So I'm actually going to put Juve just ahead of Milan. I think if anyone wants to actually make it the furthest, it'd probably be them.
I think, irrespective of competition, it'll depend if Napoli stay fit and are in the hunt for the title. Because a lot of, you have those teams in Europa League where like the league and qualifying for the Champions League is the main priority for Italian teams. So I think if Napoli are not in the title race, like they suffer like a succession of injuries early, but they stay in Europe, I think it'll be out of Juve and Napoli.
Yeah, that's just a good point. I forgot about Europa League. Yeah, I actually agree. I reckon Napoli could win Europa League.
All right, this is next category I'm entitling Box Office, and this is the team or even the matchup that no matter the hour of the night or no matter the circumstances, no matter what you're supposed to be doing, you are making time to watch them. Could be the fixture, could be the club, could be the player.
Milan derbies.
Yeah, you've got Milan and Rome derbies.
Yep,
Milan
easy
and Rome
one.
derbies, they're the must watch.
Even in itself, even the Napoli Salernitana, if you're a real football hipster, I reckon that'll be fun. That's one, when they're playing at home, Salerno at home is going to be fun.
Yeah, like that game specifically. And also another one, Juve away in Florence.
Ooh,
now with fans back, That's
Yeah.
a big one.
Real
That, like,
hatred there.
Chiesa's first game back in Fiorentina.
like with fans,
like
like that's huge, man. I think that's gonna be a big one.
I like
and
it.
they're a savage bunch of Fiorentina fans. They make noise. That actually would be pretty. That's a good point.
All right. What's your avoid? Which team are you never going to watch? Which team you really not want to subject yourself to? Is it Udinese?
3, 2, 1. Udinese. I will only watch Milan play Udinese if it's a lunchtime kickoff or it's a 6:45 a.m. I will sleep happily if it's a 2 a.m. or a 3 a.m. with that.
I lost my mind over people hyping up DePaul on Serie A Twitter. Like he was a like good numbers on a bad team, man. Like I'm not having any of that like DePaul stuff. Like Udinese were pure garbage.
All right, and the final category before I push you for your definitive predictions is the biggest villains.
Juve.
The Death Star's back.
Death Star is back, yeah.
This is like Return of the Jedi. It's the second Death Star. Not fully functional, but it's more powerful. So that's the thing. It's a worry.
That's no moon. I was going to say, apart from Juve, which is the sort of underrated team with a lot of hatchet merchants on it?
Lazio.
Hatchet.
Oh, no, like just from a pure standpoint of villainy, Lazio.
Well, they've just signed Pedro as well.
Yeah.
So that's going to make the Rome derby even more interesting. So Lazio.
All right. Final predictions here. In no particular order, your top 4, please.
Oh, Juve. This is not top. It's not who's finished. But
yeah,
Juve,
in no particular order for starters.
Milan,
We'll do champions
Atalanta,
later.
And Napoli. Juve, Milan, Atalanta, and Napoli. I could say Inter. Actually, no, Inter instead of Atalanta. Atalanta, sorry. I said fourth to start. Had a bit of a think about it. Atalanta fifth. Inter just sneak in. I think that Inter will do just enough. Just. Can they both make it? Bloody hell. This isn't easy.
It's a very strong top 6, top 7. Sassuolo might drop off. Fiorentina might, but top 4 I think is Juve, Atalanta, Napoli, Milan, and I think Juve win the title. Napoli push them though.
Well, Ante's given his champion prediction. Is it Juve for you as well, Nick?
Unfortunately,
grim faces in the chat.
Unfortunately. I do think, though, that if Allegri really pushes it, because they don't have a very deep squad this year, if they really push it in the Champions League, there could be a minor opening. But I just think that minor opening is literally the size of that little hole that the X-Wings had to shoot into the original Death Star. It is going to take... You can't use that little bring down. You need to use the force, and the force is Nikola Vlasic. And if Milan could sign him, that could change everything. And Napoli potentially getting their crap together. That's going to be interesting.
If Milan sign Vlasic, that puts them in the frame for winning the title, and I think that confirms them being a top 4 team. I think that confirms them if they sign Vlasic. I would absolutely rather Vlasic than an Isco or let's say Ilicic, for example. Even though Ilicic is a known quantity in Serie A, I think like Vlasic is absolutely the player Milan should be going after. He would be as big as, let's say, signing Shevchenko, like for Milan. He would be that big for them. But
that's a big call.
At the same time, though, I don't think Juve, like, they have depth, but the thing is for them, they have a lot of the same players. They necessarily don't have coverage and attributes, but they have like depth in bodies and
they have a lot of versatility. Like you can just plug Quadrado at right back if you have to, or you can put him at right mid if you really.
Like the thing is,
plug and play.
Yeah, like I think it's a lot of players who cover the same kind of attributes and predispositions. I don't necessarily think they're a complete squad, but they do have let's say strength relative off the bench, and that's something that the rest of Serie A kind of doesn't have. And I think they're literally.
They're literally Richmond before this. Anyways, move on before we go too much down that rabbit hole.
All right, 3 categories to go. Relegation, who's going down?
Spezia, Salernitana, and Empoli.
Yep. I'm with you.
Unanimous. Okay. All right. Top goal scorer.
Osimhen.
Oh, awesome. Ooh. It won't be. Well, Crotone's not there anymore, so Ronaldo can't stats pad. It's going to become Spezia,
Crotone,
man. See, I don't think anyone Inter or Milan's going to get it. I think it will be Victor Osimhen. I actually think it'll be Victor Osimhen as well. No one else stands out for me. Because Dzeko's not going to score that amount. Immobile won't this season. Ronaldo won't.
Not with that different dynamic. If there's, I reckon Correa scores more than Immobile this season.
Potentially. I think that this year, like third might end up being someone who we don't. It'll be someone from a mid-table team we don't. It might even be Vlahovic if he stays. So that'll be an interesting point. He scored 20 goals last season, so we'll see how he goes.
And finally, who's going to be the player of the season?
Vlasic.
Hasn't been signed yet.
No.
Dybala under Allegri.
Mm-hmm.
He has the magic.
That's a big assumption. But yeah, I think it's Dybala.
Yeah, the remontada season. It'll be either Dybala for me, or I'm even looking at. This is tough. I reckon if Lazio keeps Luis Alberto, it could be him. Sergej Milinkovic-Savic. I'm going to go on a limb. I'm going to say SMS really thrives under Sardi. I reckon he could be the player.
He makes the leap. He makes the leap. Yeah, I think there is a possibility that he makes the leap. But like Lazio have this like huge disparity between potential ceiling and potential floor. Yeah. But if they do hit that ceiling, they're going to be very good. I think they're the team that like most challenge for top four if they, reach that ceiling.
Well, all of these questions were a red herring because I already chose my team after I watched the Maradona documentary. I want a city with a chip on its shoulder. I want some nice jerseys, and I want a talismanic striker that I can pin my hopes on until he gets injured. I'm going for Napoli.
Fair enough.
You know what? I actually rate that pick. I really do, because you know what? We speak about fans coming back just before we go. So they've gone for quite a while. They've got Venezia this weekend at home. I hope they've got something planned, with the fans back for the Maradona legacy. Unfortunately, weren't able to do something with the fans there when Maradona passed. So it would be good to see them do something. And I reckon, now with the Diego Armando Maradona Stadium, it would make sense if it all comes full circle this year. So let's see. This will be a really fun season. I can't wait.
Yeah, with fans back as well. Oh, speaking of which, for the uninitiated for Serie A, the one telltale sign it's a big match is if there is an explosion randomly, like during a stoppage in the game. Let's say someone like takes a throw or something, or there's like someone getting medical treatment.
And you just hear explosions, man.
The random explosion, that's how you know it's a big match. And that's going to be the cool thing.
I spent some of last year, like during lockdown last year, watching like the Bean Classic. And it'd be like an old derby from like 2016, and you just hear, be a throw-in. Boom! I missed that, man. So let's hope we can actually watch it. That's the other thing. Let's hope that we actually get a broadcaster down here by the time Sunday rolls around.
Sorted out. Thankfully, I've got the Instat sub and dodgy Balkan stream, so I have I've got everything sorted for Serie A. If anyone boys, if you need downloads, I'm happy to help you in that respect if you have any games you need to watch. But Australian broadcasters, please sort this out. A football public cannot go without Serie A. This is the best league in the world. I don't care about your name recognition. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad for the offer there.
For a 95th minute header right now.
Sei bella come un gol.
Has to be a Romagnoli against Udinese, 97th minute, top bins, bang.
Also, can't shoot on his right foot, so he gives it back to Romagnoli.
Even if I have to...
Oh, what a time.
Even if I have to mount a coat hanger on my roof to watch Serie A, I'm going to be tuning in this year. Thanks to you two, Nick D'Urbano, Ante Jukic. Thank you for your comprehensive Serie A preview.
Merry Christmas, everyone.
No worries. It's been fun. Enjoy.